All right, YouTube, I wanted to go to bed because I have a lot to do tomorrow, but there's a pressing issue, and that issue is this. I think that there is a distinct possibility based on his words and actions and those of his staffers that Trump is epically trolling the GOP, tricking his opponents in the media, and a large proportion of the population at the same time. You all, of course, by now will be aware that multiple sources have come out and said they expect Mike Pence has been billed as Trump's VP nominee. I question this. And I question that because of this. I was thinking to myself, now I didn't originate part of this idea. I'm elaborating on something that others were posting on 4chan and elsewhere even hours ago. The fact that Trump delayed his VP announcement because of the attacks in Nice in France didn't make a whole lot of sense. Something that important, a major announcement like that, you would think that it wouldn't be postponed. I believe that he would have postponed it anyway. Because what I think he's doing is he realizes two things. First and foremost, he needs to vet people by putting the name of one or more people out there to see how people react to the possibility of them being his VP. He wants somebody who can solidify his capabilities with the GOP as well as draw an independence. Now, if we assume that Trump is using some form of grand strategy and is an intelligent individual, Mike Pence arguably makes the least sense of anybody to pick for a VP. Now, I could be totally wrong. It could be we're all barking up the wrong tree here. But I have a sneaking suspicion that he never intended for Pence to be his VP anyway and was simply putting his name out there. And here's the other reason. And this I haven't seen posted, but I have a sneaking suspicion that others will figure out, I think, the same thing. Imagine for a moment that you're Trump, and you're 99.9% sure that the Rules Committee of the RNC isn't going to be able to gather enough votes in its own committee, I think it's 28 that they need, to change the rules in order to uncouple the delegates that are there from having to vote for you. Essentially, what the Never Trump movement is trying to do is get enough support going so that it can prevent the RNC from forcing the delegates to vote for who they were actually pledged for. The idea, they would be released, they can vote for whoever they want. The idea is to deny Trump a first ballot win in order to then go forth, negotiate, make their backroom deals, jumble things around, and try to jerry-rig somebody else in as the nominee. Now, this would be suicide for the party. I don't think that most of the people there have the stomach for it, but there might be just enough ideologues to try. So what would Trump then need to do? He has his own staff leak a name that he doesn't actually intend to put forth as his VP. Somebody from generally an establishment point of view, but importantly, somebody who is also part of the Tea Party, for the Cruzites within the Republican base who might want to jerry-rig Ted Cruz specifically in as both second-place finisher, strongest runner-up, and person who they happen to like. They can make an argument going forward, if they're successful, that Ted Cruz would be the other person who would have to be included there. They would attempt to negotiate, harangue, and do whatever they can in order to get him in as the actual Republican nominee. Trump is not the sort of person that wants to be 99.9% sure that that won't happen. He wants to be 100% sure. What's the best way to do this? Leak Mike Pence's name. It's simple. Now all of a sudden the Republican Rules Committee has seen all the media reports saying, oh, well, he's going to have an insider who's kind of a Ted Cruz, when you really think about it, as his VP. And so their efforts to garner enough support to deny him the nomination, now that things have calmed down, now that they're convinced that his VP will be someone they like, somebody who is establishment, he is an insider, he is sort of a cockback corporatist. Now that they have calmed down, they're never going to get enough support mustered to actually get to the 28 votes that they need. He's tricked them. That's what I think he's doing. I think he has very little intention of really vetting Mike Pence, and I think the meeting with Pence was specifically part of a setup to do what he just did, but also to let Pence know, hey, you do this for me, there's a kickback for you, whether that's a cabinet position, a recommendation, an endorsement, $1 million, whatever it happens to be. Trump, of course, is fully capable of delivering it. Hey, how would you like a month-long, all-expenses-paid vacation, 5-star hotel in Maui or something like that? I can give that to you. Here's 50 grand also. Here's a brick of coke. Go snort it. This is the sort of thing I would expect from Trump. Now, again, there's every possibility that this is completely wrong. I'm reading way too much into it, and he doesn't really have a grand strategy because he's not too concerned about any of these things to begin with, and he really does like Mike Pence enough to want him for VP. But I have an increasing, sneaking suspicion that that's not the case. Increasingly, I'm thinking, especially framed by the terror attack in Nice, I'm thinking Michael Flynn just moved up another notch. Now, again, I could just be fooling myself with my own bias towards thinking that's the best possible person strategy-wise for him to choose. But then again, I realize I am fairly knowledgeable about politics. I'm fairly knowledgeable about human society. My understanding of who would be best as a VP candidate is based on my understanding of the kind of political strategy that I myself would use in such a situation. If my reading thereof is correct, my hunch would be that Trump would have come to a similar conclusion. Now, it could also be Gingrich. Gingrich would be seen as also an expert in some of these areas, someone who would have the foreign policy necessary for it. Gingrich would probably be the other one. It wouldn't be Christie. I think at this point Trump realizes Christie is a chucklehead. I still, thankfully, I will say, don't expect him to be chosen. Jeff Sessions would arguably be back in the mix too. When Trump puts out a message that is conflicting, something tends to be going on. Again, maybe there's not even a 10% chance that I'm right here. But if it turns out not to be Pence, I think we'll understand why. I think he's trying to simultaneously freak out the media and the fans, whip everyone into a frenzy, speculating, drag it out a few days extra, and outlast the RNC's Rules Committee, which now thinks that he is going to choose as his running mate somebody that most of them, they have no problem with. If they're in the establishment, if they're worried about money specifically, they'll say, well, you know, he's a cocksucker, he's a neocon, so we won't have any money problems. The machine will get going again. Typical machine politics, everything will be just fine. If they're more Tea Party side, they'll say, yeah, well, you know, Pence is kind of maybe fringe Tea Party, but he's in the Tea Party. He's sort of like, you know, Ted Cruz light or something. Yeah, we can deal with him. That sounds fine. As opposed to Michael Flynn or something. Now, here's the other thing. If Trump were going to choose somebody that was a total maverick, maybe even a Democrat at one point, somebody, a total unknown, somebody with no experience, a military general, or something like that, do you think that he would actually let people know before the convention that he was going to do that? The Never Trump movement would grow, and they would have a fairly good chance of uncoupling those delegates from who they're pledged to vote for. He can't have that happen. If he is going to choose a maverick, he has no choice but to wait until the last minute to actually tell everybody. But in the meantime, he can hint at Mike Pence, or he could have used Jeff Sessions, honestly, for this. I think Pence is conspicuous in that you look at everyone else. Chris Christie, he's a state-level politician, doesn't understand foreign policy. He's just a corrupt sort of carpetbagger sort of politician. So if he were going to choose him, he wouldn't tell anybody beforehand. Jeff Sessions is probably seen by most never-Trumpers and most I will settle for Trumpers as being just carpetbagged onto his campaign. Oh, well, he happened to be a higher-profile politician actually in office who joined him very early. It's not going to allay anybody's fears. Newt Gingrich, kind of outdated 90s-ish, more acceptable, more tolerable to the establishment than these other names, but at the same time still, like, you know, distant runner-up last time around against Romney and Santorum, kind of most support in the South, kind of lackluster, mediocre, whatever. If it was going to be Michael Flynn, I can guarantee he wouldn't tell anybody beforehand, before the actual convention. He'd trot him out up on stage right after they confirm that Trump is indeed the complete, utter, we have chosen him, nothing can stop us now nominee. He would wait until then to do it. He would also wait if he were going to choose somebody like, if he were going to choose like Rand Paul or Jim Webb or Ben Carson or somebody like that, he wouldn't tell anybody beforehand. because it would cause more concern among the establishment, and the Never Trump movement could theoretically get to the 28 that it needs. They could harass the delegates. They could do some backroom deals, and they could stop him from being nominated. Again, it would be completely suicidal. But a lot of these people are really more concerned about getting their job, the senators and Congress people that they're associated with, keeping their jobs, and they're convinced that Trump is going to lose spectacularly. I think the other thing that helps him is sort of the last round of polling coming out before the convention looks good for Trump. That's going to help him a lot. The fact, sad as though it may sound, the fact that there was a major terrorist attack again right before the convention is also going to shut up some of the Never Trumpers, because he is the premier, we will fuck with ISIS, we will stop this from happening candidate. Whether you believe he can do that or not, some of them do, some of them don't. But if he wants to keep the establishment calm, leaking Mike Pence's name, whether he ever intended to take him seriously as a possible VP or not, is probably the wisest thing to do. He's conspicuous there in being specifically the most establishment and most Tea Party friendly person on that list of 5 names that was given out some time ago. So, while I'm not certain about this, it's just speculation, I have no specific proof that this is the case. If I believe that Trump is smart, then it doesn't really matter who he chooses as VP. But if I choose to believe he is a strategic genius, and everything so far in this election has shown me that's the case, whether or not he knows anything about foreign policy or not, you can debate all day, but strategy-wise, as far as elections go, quite clearly, he beat out 16 other people. He's now about tied with Hillary Clinton, who supposedly is like the strongest Democrat in history, according to her fans. So I'm going to give him credit where credit's due. My now operating assumption is it's no longer a foregone conclusion that just because it's been said by a staffer or his son or whatever, oh yeah, it's going to be Mike Pence. That doesn't mean it's going to be Mike Pence. It could be part of an elaborate ruse. Now, there's a good chance I'm wrong. There's a good chance it will be Mike Pence, but it's not certain yet. And Trump himself had to come out and clarify, say, oh, well, no, I haven't made my final decision. What that might be is a scapegoat for the fact that it's not going to be Mike Pence. Did anybody think of that? Some people probably have. Others probably didn't bother. They didn't read that much into it. And still others don't give a fuck about what I'm talking about, apolitical or something. But yeah, it seems like there is a possibility that this could be part of the most epic trolling of the GOP. And that's really who he's trolling here. He's not trolling Hillary's fans. They'll ramble all day about how, oh, Mike Pence anti-gay, Mike Pence anti-abortion, or whatever, something like that. If he wants a maverick to be his VP, he's not going to tell you before the convention or very, very close to it, or at the very least after the Rules Committee has confirmed, yeah, pledged delegates have to vote for who they're pledged for. That's kind of the point of pledged delegates. That's about all. Peace out.